Hello, doctors. This is Doug Grant, President Optimal Health Systems, and tell you we have an exciting webinar for you tonight. We have the trifecta on with us. I'll be here to answer questions and share some information. And also, Dr. John Brimhall's on. He'll come on in just a second. And then the featured speaker tonight is Dr. Harris, that's going to be introducing a new formula that he's made that really took the methylation seminar this last weekend in Florida by storm, and really the excitement was just off the charts. We had a record-breaking attendance at the methylation seminar that Dr. Harris teaches, the 3-day seminar in Orlando, Florida. We'll talk more about it a little bit later. If you haven't been to one yet, you've got to get to one of these seminars that just will completely transform your clinic, and hopefully Dr. Harris will even tease us a little bit, give us a little more information about that, and we'll at the end talk about it some more. But just so that everyone knows, Dr. Harris tonight's going to be talking about the essential 4 vitamins, some of the research that's been around forever that really didn't make sense, and he'll share with you why a lot of that information that people believe is really not based on science, and why it's important to rely on certain vitamins and a formula that he's put together. Also, I want everyone to write down, or you'll notice on the webinar tab there's a place for you to type in questions. And through the webinar, please type in your questions. That way we'll have them and be able to bring them up at the end for Dr. Harris or myself or Dr. Brimhall to answer, and be able to make sure that all your questions are answered. This is a great use of technology to be able to have this ability anywhere in the world for health professionals to get this information live and be educated from the webinars, and we're excited to have it. So before I turn the time over to Dr. Harris, I believe Dr. John's on right now to want to mention a few things. Dr. John, you here with us?
I sure am. It's amazing. Poor Dr. Harris is 4 months behind in his office to get a new patient in, and then he's doing a methylation seminar 1 month, and he does a stem cell seminar the next. So everybody needs to be as kind to him as you can and not shoot him too many questions. We're working on trying to free up some of his time, but right now he's figured out how not to eat much, but he hasn't figured out how not to sleep. So we need to respect his time there. It's very exciting, as Doug says, with the methylation seminars. It's very exciting with the stem cell seminars. The next one we have is in Florida, is in May, the first weekend in May. We do have a few seats open there. So with what you hear tonight, if you want to know more, about the stem cells or the cutaneous nervous system treatment, the other things that he does, PRP, I think the whole world needs to know about the cutaneous system. And the thing that really shocked me, that hearing him talk this time, knowing him all these years, I did not realize that it was the cutaneous nervous system treatment he developed to get himself out of a wheelchair. He was in a wheelchair for 20 years. Those of you know him, you say, you're kidding. You can't tell at all. They told me he'd never walk again, but he defies all gravity that I know about. So please call the office, brimhall.com, or give Jason a call if you have any interest whatsoever in knowing more about the stem cell. We'd love to see you. And Dr. Harris, we're excited to hear what you're going to tell us tonight. Go take it away, please.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Harris, talking to you from Bozeman, Montana, where it just stopped snowing, but this is Montana. Anyway, we're talking about today vital 4 vitamins, and most people, heard about vitamins, know about vitamins, or think we do. But maybe this will be some very new information to you, and I think it will be. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is one we're very familiar with. This is the sunshine vitamin D, and we're familiar with it, and we know we go out in the sun, we make vitamin D, and then we're good. Well, maybe not that good. So, but vitamin D is an important vitamin, and we're going to look a little bit about what some of the science says as to where vitamin D does and where it's used in the body. Okay, so the first place we kind of see the literature, and some of the literature there is presented to you, and there's a lot more, but we see these particular uses, and as we look at this list, we're going to see that a lot of this stuff is because vitamin D is so good for the immune system, but some of it not so much immune system, because it helps with type 2 diabetes, which is 95% of diabetes, It helps with hypertension, which is one of the biggest issues of our time. And then also with depression. And we're going to see why it helps with depression, because we've never really used it for that. But everyone thinks you get out in the sun, you're happier. And in the wintertime, there's less. So you get seasonal affective disorder because the sun's not out. But we're going to see that connection. Okay, and then there's data that shows it's good for myocardial infarction, stroke, rheumatoid arthritis, skin health. And then interesting studies showed vitamin D reduces falls by 50%. And as we get older and people fall down, they break their hip and typically then hit mortality within a year. Okay, it works for anxiety too. We're going to find out why. And osteoporosis, you know, people say vitamin D is good for your bones. But is it really? Teeth, same thing as bones, and insulin, same as diabetes. Lung health, flu, because of the immune system. Connection to autism and Alzheimer's, asthma also. And oh wait, there's even more. So hair loss, fatigue, connection to fibromyalgia, and many cancers. So how do we make the stuff? You can make it from the sun, you can get it from mushrooms. And then basically that goes to our liver. We make 25-OHD calcidiol, and then that is not the active form. So then we take it through an enzyme that's magnesium dependent to the kidneys, where we make 125 dihydroxyvitamin D calcitriol. That's the active form. So now we also have the vitamin D binding protein, and then we find certain things can screw that up. And this is a precursor to the vitamin D receptor to getting vitamin D where it's needed in the body. So the interferences are with autism, and that's why there's a connection with vitamin D with autism. There's a chemical put out by cancer cells and HIV cells, hepatitis A, B, herpes, and Epstein-Barr. And what's the commonality of these conditions? They're really hard to treat, and not too many things seem to work for them. It's because when the vitamin D binding protein is screwed up, it keeps our body's ability to make natural killer cells. And all these infections and cancer make this chemical that vitamin D is crucial for. And if a chemical is made, vitamin D does not do that. Okay, so the other thing is the vitamin D receptor, VDR, which we see right over here, and that binds the vitamin D once it's bound to vitamin D binding protein. And then we see it forms a complex with an RXR receptor, and then it actually goes through here and stimulates our DNA to make proteins. So this is basically controlling our DNA, and this is more than we ever thought it did. Okay, so where do we have D receptors? Well, we have them in our bones, connective tissue, gut, liver, kidneys. We have them in our pancreas, lungs, muscles, thymus, all these places, all those places, and here, and there, and there. And then vitamin D dependent mRNA transcription. In other words, making stuff in our DNA. Okay, so if we look at this, we have the sun, we have our diet, mostly brown mushrooms. White mushrooms don't have any vitamin D, brown mushrooms do. Then we make vitamin D3 in our liver, 25 dioxy vitamin D3, but that's not the active form. Goes to the liver, and then it goes just about everywhere else. And probably the list of what vitamin D does not do would be a smaller list. Okay, now, calcium absorption. Osteoporosis is rampant in the developing world, and they've looked at osteoporosis in postmenopausal women and started recommending up to 1,500 milligrams a day of vitamin C. And how has that affected osteoporosis? Not a bit. Okay, so we're talking about how we absorb calcium. So these studies show that we can have gastritis with hypochlorhydria or complete atrophy of the system, and we need acidity to absorb calcium. And how many people are on proton pump inhibitors or H2 blockers or TUMS So with high acidity, minerals dissociate from food complexes. They don't get absorbed. And the references are right there. Okay, and then how many people are on these drugs? Omeprazole, lansoprazole, all the prazols. They inhibit hydrochloric acid production. Okay, and then Tums. Tums with calcium. It says it right here, calcium rich, goes to work in seconds. So what does Tums do? It makes the gut more alkaline. And then you can't even absorb the calcium in Tums. So virtually useless. Okay, and then you can get this stuff over the counter, the purple pill. Okay, so it was found vitamin D increased absorption by 65%. So think of vitamin D as a very good thing to get absorption of calcium into your stomach because it increased it by 65%. And this is what this is talking about. It didn't increase vitamin D absorption, it increased calcium absorption. Okay, so good. We go out in the sun, we make vitamin D, we get calcium from milk. Oh wait, do we? Well, there's calcium in milk, but again, it's alkaline. And it's so alkaline we don't absorb it. And then milk protein casein is acidic. So to buffer that acidity in the blood, the body mobilizes calcium with osteoclasts. So we actually get a net loss of bone. Okay, and then vitamin D serum level increased exponentially with decreasing SPF, meaning the lower the SPF was, the higher the vitamin D was, and the higher the SPF, that's for sunscreen we're talking about here, then the lower vitamin D was. Okay, so you look at the American Academies of Dermatology's website. Here's a few of the facts section. They say, who needs sunscreen? Their answer is everyone. And what sunscreen should I use? Well, first, every day when you're outside, not just in the summer. And what should I use? SPF 30 or higher. And what does that do? Blocks 97% of UV rays, the very same rays we need, UVB, to make vitamin D. And how much should I use? Full body coverage every 2 hours. And more if you swim or sweat. Who sweats in the sun? And so basically a standard size bottle of sunscreen, according to them, should last you 3 days. Okay, so here we have a problem. Now, sunlight, hormones, and vitamin D. Since females are much more directly productive than the male, I know a few men are getting upset now, but a broad experimental effect directly affected endocrine glands and optimal sexual capacity. But this original data was done out of poultry science with a white longhorn cockerel. That's the male that wasn't productive. But the second study was done in Antarctica on people, and they found that in the wintertime, when there was no sun, there was a problem upon growth, endocrine glands, and sexual capacity. And infertility, which we saw was important for vitamin D. So this is not just white longhorn cockerels, unless you're really into them and you raise them, then maybe they need vitamin D also, but maybe more than that. Okay, so this was the penguin study, and the fella filming the penguins was probably there in the summertime because the sun is out, and the penguins looked terrified by the guy. No, not at all. Okay, so they stayed there 12 months, and testosterone decreased in winter, and FSH, LH, and prolactin were also down in winter because we saw vitamin D receptors on reproductive cell organs. Okay, now we're going to talk about vitamin D and happiness because we saw earlier on the list that vitamin D was part of anxiety and happiness. Now, tyrosine is a precursor to dopamine, and dopamine is one of our happy hormones. So tyrosine goes to L-DOPA, then it goes down to dopamine, then it goes to norepinephrine, which is the primary driver of the sympathetic nervous system fight or flight, and epinephrine. But this has to all be balanced. And now, something else we're going to see, we have an enzyme here called tyrosine hydroxylase, and that's necessary for tyrosine to convert to L-DOPA. And tyrosine hydroxylase is vitamin D dependent. So this is why vitamin D is so important to our happiness, because we make dopamine, and important to the autonomic nervous system because we make norepinephrine. But is that the only thing? Okay, so we have more happiness, and we have here tryptophan. And typically we think of tryptophan, our mind thinks of turkey and falling asleep. Well, there's actually very little tryptophan in turkey. It's the big Thanksgiving meal that makes you fall asleep. Okay, but tryptophan goes down and makes 5-HTP, but there can be another step. If you're low on vitamin B3, tryptophan will manufacture vitamin B3. So if people are deficient on vitamin B3, they can be depressed because tryptophan doesn't go and make serotonin. And that'll be the next step. And right here we have serotonin, the other happy hormone, but also one of the prime drivers, along with acetylcholine, of the parasympathetic nervous system. And this particular, now, then we make melatonin, which is sleep and anti-cancer and immune system, and more than you can possibly imagine. And now we have an enzyme called tryptophan hydroxylase that we need to make this, that is also vitamin D dependent. So this is why happiness is part. Okay, but it all sounds good, but then we come to the COPD study, not chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, but the Copenhagen vitamin D study. So they found that if vitamin D got up to 70 or 90, you could have a stroke. Well, that was like a kick in the teeth. But there was a couple problems with the study. They measured vitamin D once, and then the study ended and people moved, died, or the end of the study. They took account of a couple things, but not others, and they found that the people died tended to be older. Well, what a big surprise. We needed a study to tell us that, and this is the study. Okay, but basically older people getting sick and dying is not a big surprise to anybody. So, but other studies said the same thing. So now we have to think about this some more. Okay, so we looked before at the vitamin D receptor has an RXR receptor. This is a retinoid X receptor. Retinoid, retinoic acid, vitamin A. When you have them together, then we make proper proteins. And what's going on here? Okay, so they come into the gene coding region, and this forms what is called a heterodimer, meaning two enzymes working together. And the RXR receptor fits on a lot of things, not just the vitamin D receptor, but for our responses here, important. Then we go to the vitamin D responsive element and we code our genes. Okay, so the RXR is part of many things, including thyroid hormone receptors and PPAR, which we're going to talk about more. Okay, and RXR binds vitamin A, and there's two others, RAR and ROR. ROR, they thought, did nothing, stands for retinoid orphan receptor, because they didn't think it did anything, but now we know it does. And it's a fact of we were ignorant, but our bodies weren't. Okay, so the heterodimer, we see it, and now PPAR, peroxisome proliferator activated receptors, triglycerides, energy homeostasis. These things work at our mitochondria. They make us more sensitive to insulin, glucose metabolism, and fatty acid metabolism. That's why they're good for the mitochondria. So then they show PPAR is important for inflammation, cancer, neurodegenerative disorders, meaning our brains. And the PPAR also forms a heterodimer. Oh, and transcription. PPAR forms a heterodimer with the vitamin A receptor. Okay, so then there's a couple studies that show vitamin A might be toxic. So they've suggested an association more than 1,500 micrograms, and that's about 50,000 units. reduced bone mineral density, and increased fracture risk. And then, however, the results have been mixed. So the safe retinol intake is unknown. How's that for strong data to guide you? But that was well in excess of what I think anyone should take. That's a gargantuan dose, and that's upwards of 50,000 units of vitamin A. And frankly, that's not even made by anybody except prescriptions. And one of the studies that showed it was very high was not done with vitamin A. It was done with Accutane, which is a vitamin A analog prescription drug. And everyone who's on it for acne has their liver enzymes measured every month. Okay, beta-carotene. If we have a problem with vitamin A, let's just take beta-carotene, split it in half, make 2 vitamin A's. No problem. Or is there? Okay, we even have an enzyme to do it. But there was a Finnish study. This was fairly unique. The Annals of Epidemiology in 1994. No authors were listed. Well, the Finns are thought to be very introverted, but quite introverted to not put their names on. So it found in smokers, it increased the risk of lung cancer for beta-carotene. Well, not everyone smokes, but a lot of people in Europe do. Okay, so this was a small study, but a good study. 45 volunteers, young people, 20 to 29, half male, half female. Half of them didn't take up beta-carotene at all from their diet, and the other half didn't form much vitamin A. So half didn't absorb it and half didn't form vitamin A from it. So beta-carotene is not the answer. It's important, but it's not vitamin A. The absorption is very low. Okay, but you can get vitamin A from liver. And I think they have liver with onions because the onions cover up the liver and you can't see it. And then when you have animals in this condition, how healthy a liver do you think you're getting? So maybe that's not the answer either. So vitamin A has been shown to, we kind of know about it and think about it a lot for vision, but the immune system, like the vitamin A secretory immune globulin A, you need vitamin A for that. And then skin, bones, urinary stones, muscle growth, and muscles have more mitochondria, and that makes everything better. Reduces acne, prevents cancer, repairs tissue, lowers cholesterol. Yes, vitamin A has been shown to lower cholesterol and slows the aging process. Okay. Now, we talked about vitamin D and vitamin A having the same receptor. And when they do that, they manufacture calcitonin, which is done in the thyroid gland. And that inhibits osteoclasts, and meaning it then helps osteoblasts, which is bones, nerves, and muscles. It increases calcium content to the bone. So it's not about the amount of calcium, it's how it's metabolized. Okay, then we have matrix GLA protein. This is another protein that is made in the presence of vitamin D and vitamin A, and this one removes calcium from where it should not be, like our arteries. So the Finnish COPD study did not take this into account, and this was why the problems ensued in the studies that showed vitamin D causing myocardial infarction or heart attack or stroke. Okay, then it also removes arteries from our kidneys like kidney stones, our pineal gland, and this is one of the main reasons as we get older we get less sleep because we get calcification of the pineal gland and any soft tissue. For instance, calcification of breast tissue, which is generally a precursor to breast cancer. So matrix GLA. So vitamin D and A, we need to make these. Okay, so calcitonin and matrix GLA are so important, but when we make them, they're not active. And we have to do something to make them active. So now we have a couple of vitamins. We have to go through a process called carboxylation. That is done on vitamin K2. And we get K2, there are 7 of them, but the 2 important ones are MK4 and MK7. We can get it from butter that comes from cows that ate grass in June, only fast-growing grass, and the other source is this stuff called natto, which is a fermented soybean that roughly translates from Japanese to stinky and slimy. And you can see the slime over here. And hard to believe, but people don't find that appetizing. Okay, so Menaquinone 4 is MK4, Menaquinone 7, MK7. These are called vitamin K2. Now, MK4 correlated with sphingolipid concentrations. In other words, it builds up the myelin sheath. So now we think it might be really good for something like multiple sclerosis or other demyelinating diseases of neurochemistry. Okay, so basically a damaged myelin sheath, we're going to have problems with nerve transmission. And a healthy myelin sheath, we get healthy nerves. Not the only thing that makes our nerves healthy, but we certainly need a good myelin sheath. Okay, now we have a little problem with MK4 supplementation. It seemed to clear from the body very quickly, half-life of an hour, and no matter what supplementation we gave to people, it did not raise their blood levels. So putting MK4 in a supplement seems to be folly because it doesn't raise blood levels. Well, what's a person to do? We want a myelin sheath, but it doesn't raise our blood levels. Okay, so Menaquinone 4 originates from Phylloquinone, which is vitamin K1 and 2 routes of accumulation. Basically, followed in the intestine by prenylation of menaquinone. Prenylation is adding a hydrophobic group in the gut, then it flows to everything, and it does it directly in the cerebral tissue. Prenylation adding a hydrophobic group. That's a good mnemonic for hydrophobic. So not too hard a system, not liking water, hydrophobic. Okay, now vitamin K1. We just said it turned to K4, but the basic root, vitamin K1, also has to be carboxylated, and it forms carboxylation, and then it's screwed up by warfarin or coumadin, and then we need NAD, which is made in our mitochondria and in our methylation pathways. We'll talk about more of them in a moment. And then we form vitamin K, which is known as an aid to clotting. But is that all it does? Well, in osteoporosis, we've been shown to have low levels of vitamin K1. Well, clotting has nothing to do with osteoporosis, but calcium metabolism does. But in all likelihood, the K1 worked because it converted to K4, but K4 doesn't work by itself. So now K1 becomes critical because it converts to K4. Okay, so MK4 and MK7 together reduce stiffness of arteries. So arteries can then expand, prevents bone loss. And it's actually been shown this combination can, in the presence of vitamin D and vitamin A, can increase bone mass by 4% per year until we get to the levels we had when we were 25 years of age. And this is why just increasing calcium does not increase your bone density at all. Okay, so K2 can stimulate messenger RNA production of osteoblasts. So this might be why it's good for our bones, because that's what we use to build bones. Okay, and then the MK4 form myelinates our nerves. Now we got some good looking stuff here. Okay, so now we kind of look at, we have a balancing act between vitamin D, vitamin A, and vitamin K2. So we have vitamin D here, vitamin A, vitamin K2. Now we see, and we have two K2s, and we have two vitamin A receptors, RXR, RAR, and vitamin D. So we see if we have anything here that is off, the whole thing will come tumbling down. So the critical thing is to take all four of them together. Okay, so the form we often swallow, 125-OHD, active D3, and vitamin D3 is not active. We convert it to the active form in the presence of magnesium, which is great because, you know, food might contain magnesium, it's in plants. And then the active form does a lot of stuff. We talked about it being good for our bones, as long as there's vitamin A and vitamin K1 and K2 with it. Good for our arteries, good for our immunity, and then balances the autonomic nervous system because it balances serotonin and dopamine. Good against cancer, good for our muscles. And then we had that link to autism, Alzheimer's, and blood sugar. All sounds good, but the COPD study was the elephant in the room because we have arterial calcification, kidney stones, and pineal calcification. Oops. Well, how about vitamin A? That does some good things too. It's been shown good for our bones and arteries and immune system, our vision, cancer, tells our DNA what to do, has receptors that complex it for the thyroid and PPAR, and once PPAR is working good, mitochondrial health, cholesterol, DNA transcription, and autophagy, which is the process where cells die, but they give up their nutrients. But now we have another elephant in the room because vitamin A has been shown to be toxic to your liver. Well, that study was a little nebulous. Okay, now we got two elephants in the room. Vitamin D gives us a heart attack and vitamin A gives us liver toxicity. Now, are these overriding factors that we shouldn't take them? Well, let's find out. Okay, vitamins K1 and K2, myelination of the nerves, mineralization of teeth. Well, same process that makes it good for bones. Also good for varicose veins and leukemias and a lot of things, some things that are good for solid cancers, as not as good for the blood cancers, but vitamin K1 and 2 are, because along with vitamin A, they code for gene transcription. That has also been shown in hepatocellular cancer, Alzheimer's, and probably this particular box here, all cause mortality. Elastin, good for the skin, good for the lungs. And then carboxylation, bones and arteries. And now we don't have any elephants. Now, we have a test that can test for matrix GLA, but the test is for an uncarboxylated. So it doesn't tell you if all the levels are good. So the tests have not really caught up to the research at this point. Okay, so tests showed that almost 100% of people were deficient, even though it's the best test we have. So it was 99.8% of people were deficient because not a lot of people are eating churning butter in June, nor are they eating natto. And that gives us to a little bit of a story. Natto comes out of Japan, and this is a story on how it got popular, and it might just be a story. In feudal Japan, there were a lot of wars between the clans, and at the time they fed the horses soybeans. But they were going into a pitched battle, and they left a bag of soybeans in a sack and went off to battle. And they were gone for a month, but they got back there, and they opened up the sack, and it was slimy. And they decided, the people decided to eat it, and they liked it. And then Japan does not break themselves up into states, they break themselves up into prefectures. And there's one prefecture alone in Japan where they eat natto really with zeal. And that particular prefecture has far and away the lowest incidence of osteoporosis in all of Japan. And they eat a lot of fish and fish liver, so they get vitamin A there also. But that's about the only place in Japan where they eat it. I've tried it. I found it foul and disgusting. Okay, so now we have the vitamin D. We have everything vitamin A does. We have everything vitamin K does. Now this list is growing, but now we have elephants. Or do we? Because they all work together, it's been shown in the studies that when you have vitamin A and D together, they never give you a risk of liver toxicity, cancer, or anything else. And this is the problem. The studies go through one vitamin at a time. But is that the way we eat? No, it is not. We don't take a tomato home, extract lycopene, and have it for dinner. So we have the balance now. Vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K1, and vitamin K2. Now, we still have the question, if you have vitamin K1, can you give this to people on Coumadin and warfarin? Well, what the data shows, even though they're advised not to eat greens, it shows that vitamin K1 from greens does not interfere with the PTs or the INRs or the PTTs. It doesn't interfere with the blood clotting whatsoever if they're taking Coumadin and warfarin. Although I'd rather have them on essential fatty acids and vitamin E to thin their blood. But when someone puts them on warfarin, they have to take them off of it. So, and then but what about vitamin K1? Isn't that synthetic? Well, not the one we're using. It's food-based. Okay, so now we have that one elephant, but we don't really, because now when these are done together, we see no elephant, no kidney stone, no pineal calcification, no arterial, and no liver toxicity. The key here is doing them all together. Okay, now magnesium, we talked about that before because it's kind of important to convert vitamin D to its active form, and that is dependent on magnesium. Now, we have a few studies that, this is a direct quote from the studies, that there's massive magnesium depletion in the soil. Because, and this is from Journal of Plant Science, Journal of Medicine, and this has been a big problem since 1935, and the problem only got worse. We keep fertilizing with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and growing monocrops, and then we get massive depletion of the soil. And if we don't have it in the soil, we're not getting in our dark leafy greens. So magnesium becomes critically important, but there's a lot of bad magnesium formulas on the market. A lot of people take magnesium citrate. It's 5% absorbable, good for constipation and nothing else. Magnesium oxide, 1% absorbable, good for constipation and nothing else. Magnesium aspartate contains aspartic acid. If you've got a brain problem, aspartic acid is neuroinflammatory. If you don't, it's not a problem, but let's not take that chance. So we put together a magnesium. This is a magnesium bisglycinate, and because of the way that it's manufactured by OHS, it's virtually 100% absorbable. So don't give to patients who are constipated, because it won't work for that. But we'll do the other 5,000 things that magnesium does in the body. Okay, so now we're going to need magnesium, and the estimates are, with the massive magnesium depletion, is that 99.9% of people are deficient on magnesium. Now, if you take too much magnesium and it's not a good form, you'll get diarrhea. This one won't do it. And other nutrients can kill you, but magnesium, don't think there is a too high amount. Okay, so we have essential 4 vitamins together. But a lot of people are making D3 with K2. Hey, a lot of people are doing it. That must be good. And some even tell you D3 and K2. A lot of them are doing it. But there's no vitamin A. Because people are afraid of vitamin A, but they don't appear to have read the studies. Because when you have K2 and D3, you're using K2 to activate the 2 proteins that you need vitamin A to manufacture. And if you don't have vitamin A, you're using the 2 vitamins to activate nothing at all. So it's not enough. So you have to have D3 and the therapeutic amount. You have to have A with the therapeutic amount, not 50,000 units. You got to have K1 with a therapeutic amount and K2 with a therapeutic amount. They have to be together, essential 4 vitamins. So a year and a half ago, I asked Doug at Optimal Health Systems to make this, and this was introduced last Saturday. So now we have D3, vitamin A, K1, and K2 all together, all in the right ratios, all food-based, all pre-digested, so you get a much higher effective dose. Now, as we've been talking about vitamin D, I want to introduce another concept of epigenetics. So what is it? Well, this has come down the pike really since 1951, and this is what controls your genes. And the most studied thing of what controls your genes is methylation, not the only thing that controls your genes. And here we're talking about the vitamin D receptor, where vitamin D fits. We talked about this a little bit, that complexes with the vitamin A. But this is one gene. And we have a problem when we look at one gene. As many other physicians order an MTHFR gene, and patients know it, and then they get a methylated folate. But all the SNPs, the single nucleotide polymorphisms, work together. So if you just do one gene and don't account for other ones, you can throw something off up or downstream. Okay, so talking of methylation, I just finished a 3-day seminar in Orlando, and we're coming to Seattle in May. We'll be in Las Vegas in September, and then we're going to be in Charlotte in November. This is 3 days. We go through 30 to 40 genes, and that schedule you can see at optimalhealthsystems.com, and that's where this stuff is available too. And the other thing about these vitamins, they are dissolvable in fat, and most people are putting these in cottonseed oil or soybean oil. Cottonseed is the most heavily sprayed crop in the country with pesticides. So you're only getting a little bit per day, but it adds up. And soybeans are okay, but not when the oil is extracted. So it has to be in the right oil. In this one it is. So we have essential 4 vitamins with thousands of vital functions. And we've kind of got Doug at Optimal Health to put it out, and it came out last Saturday. We introduced it to, first time I'd even seen it, and there it is. So basically, this is what we kind of need, and it's estimated that 90, I measure vitamin Ds. People are in the single digits. Vitamin K1 and K2, the study showed 100% of people are deficient. And vitamin A, if people are not eating liver, and you can measure it. I've never seen a decent level on this. So basically, these are things people are not getting. They show people vitamin D deficient who live in Arizona. They don't go outside. I live in Montana. Here they say we can make vitamin D in July and August if you're naked at noon. I'm not 18. No one wants to see me naked. So these are the critical things. Okay, so
Mind if I pop in here really quick 1 second, Dr. Harris?
Please ask them, and then we might have a couple comments to be made. But this is the newest thing we have available to us. It is therapeutic doses, it is food-based, and there's no level of toxicity ever. And it would even be okay for people on Coumadin and warfarin from a medical perspective, but we have to worry about medical pushback. So I still would not recommend it for those patients, because what people think about K1, they're thinking about synthetic, they don't know this is food-based, and you'll get pushback. So we have another thing, and Doug can tell you about that, for those people who are on Coumadin and warfarin.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay, Dr. Harris?
I can hear you great.
Yeah, well, I was just going to mention about the seminars that you had that slide on there for the methylation seminars. We wanted to give the health professionals listening tonight a special opportunity, because we did sell out, and weren't able to allow more doctors to come to the Orlando seminar. We apologize for those of you that tried to get in there, and we wanted to make sure that everyone had the opportunity to hear you, but we want to keep the settings intimate. And so in Seattle, what we want to do is for the doctors that are excited but maybe don't live really close to Seattle, we are going to give him $100 off. It's only a $395 seminar as it is, which, as you know, is worth thousands, but it's only $395. You get the free kit that Dr. Harris made, the methylation kit. You get tons of information, research, samples, and 3 days worth of information. You get fed. And instead of $395 though, if you call into Optimal Health Systems this week, you'll get the Seattle methylation seminar for only $295. And we did that to be able to help those of you that want to come, maybe couldn't make it to Florida, to help out with expenses, maybe with plane trips and those types of things, and still make it affordable for you to be there. So make sure you take advantage of that this week. Only $295 to be able to get Dr. Harris in the room for 3 days on this seminar. And we've already today had people come from the Orlando seminar say they have never done so much nutrition, helped so many patients just in the 2 days they've been in their clinic since the seminar Saturday, Sunday. So it's an exciting thing to have. I wanted to mention that. And then just as Dr. Harris mentioned with Coumadin and warfarin in them, we do have the acute formula that the research was done at the University of Toronto showing that we're able to improve the blood flow a lot with it. But I think that the thing that maybe Dr. Harris want me to mention is the blood vessel flexibility formula with the nitrous oxide to be able to increase the blood flow, increasing the flexibility of the blood vessels. And that's probably, you know, the second biggest hit this last weekend of doctors being excited about to help with heart health.
This is increasing blood flow. We talked about vitamin A being good for the arteries. This stuff increases nitric oxide. They work great together.
Well, that's a great point to be able to combine that. And so the BFF is a great formula. Doctors, you can call and even ask for samples for it because it's so easy to show the positive benefits of it. And but please take advantage of that methylation seminar, only good for this week, because we will get to that point again that we'll have to start turning people away. But we wanted to give all of you that sacrificed your night to be here to hear Dr. Harris the opportunity to be there.
A couple of questions, Doug. Is it okay if I take them now?
Yeah, let's hit them.
Okay, so we had a question, how much vitamin D should we take per day? Now, this is a little bit of we talk about vitamin D per day and then how absorbable the formula is. So what the data shows is that if a patient is under 1 year of age, they should be on 1,000 units a day. If they're between 1 and 8, 2,500 units. And after 8, start at 5,000. Now, I'm usually recommending for the essential 4 vitamins 2 per day, which provides 2,500 units of vitamin D. But because of the pre-digested fermented form, it's about the equivalent of 5,000 to 7,500. And then what I'm looking for in blood is, as long as they have got a decent vitamin D receptor, and we teach you how to determine that in the seminar, if they've got a good vitamin D receptor, I want their blood levels of 25 OHD to be between 70 and 90. If they've got a vitamin D receptor problem, I'm going to want it up around 120. Okay, now we have another question. And it says it seems that people not having a gallbladder or biliary stasis have greater efficiency absorbing fat-soluble vitamins. What is the dosing with these patients different? Well, this is what we're talking about before. We have fat-soluble vitamins. So vitamin D's, some of them are made in a dry form. If people have biliary stasis or no gallbladder, yes, they're going to have a problem. But this one is put together with the proper fat. So even with biliary stasis, and because it's pre-digested, they can absorb it, even if they have something like a candida or a parasite. So don't worry at all about that. But if they have dry form, absolutely they'll have absorption problems. But this is in the proper fat, so they will not have that problem. I hope, and if that is sufficient, otherwise continue with your question, Dr. Pucci. Okay, but I hope that answered your question. So as long as you have the fat-soluble form in the proper fat, and as I said before, most people are using cottonseed oil or soybean oil, which is not the proper fat. Okay. If there's any additional questions, please let me know. Otherwise, Doug or John, if you have anything you want to add or say, please do.
Well, hey, this is Doug again. I just want everyone to know that one of the exciting things about working with Dr. Harris is he could have very easily came out and said, look, the research is not right what we've been taught about vitamin A, and you know, you can mix it with vitamin D and these things and it's healthy for it and you need it. But instead, we've got the research, the explanations, and the studies to show and to back it up. And it's one of the most exciting things that Dr. Harris brings to the table is the research behind the recommendations and the formulas. And so we're very excited. And I just wanted to personally thank Dr. Harris for bringing that to the table and spending so much time in the research and then being able to extrapolate it down for those of us to be able to understand it. And we really appreciate your time tonight.
It's been an interesting journey for me to know Dr. Harris. He's been my friend for 20 years, and I had no idea the genius was sitting there in the seat listening to me all those years. He had to be bored, but he never acted like it. But the key was the research that I did. I used 5 criteria to formulate nutrition. He found that it worked. He found that it balanced out with the literature that he read. I don't know anybody can read the literature, read all of it in 3 different languages and remember it. That almost seems unhuman, Dr. Harris. But that's the thing he's doing now, is evaluating all the nutrition I have made, that Doug has formulated, other companies, and he shows the flaws in some of the other companies, which shows how ours has worked so well because it is whole food, pre-digested, all natural foods. They are synergistic and they work together. Almost all the formulas I have done are synergistic combinations, where in some cases, Dr. Harris wants individual nutrients. Now he's blending the individual nutrients in the package they need to be in to help almost every specific function in the body. It's beyond exciting. It's really unbelievable. And it's just a shame Dr. Harris didn't tell me who he was 20 years ago. I claimed I'd taken him out of the closet, not for the usual reason, but he was hiding in Bozeman. He cannot hide anymore. If you haven't heard him speak, you're cheating yourself, you're cheating your family, you're cheating life. And
the line I put together is called Methylation Essentials, but this one is going, yes, for methylation, but well beyond it, because
exactly
100% of people are deficient.
Just the key I want to say is, guys, come and join us. I'm getting older, but Dr. Harris is getting younger because of all the stem cells that he uses. And we want to have you enjoy the health until you're 139, as Dr. Dennis Harper says, by doing everything that we're able to unload now because of Dr. Harris. Thank you. God bless you all. And thank you, Dr. Harris.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, doctors.
And thank you for attending and spending your time with me. Have a great night and hope to see you very soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.